Over here is the north part of the map, or north part of the quarry. This is the neck right here. And so there's a star down here too, but they added 2 new temperature monitoring probes. And they're enhancing 2 gas interceptor wells. There wasn't really any details beyond that in the latest report file, at least that we read. And again, I'm just kind of recapping what the report says. The coalition hasn't come out with any formal response yet. It's pretty dense stuff. Next. So the trigger line 1, those are tripped if they hit 200 degrees automatically, the trigger, and we'll get to what happens in a moment. The current temperatures in the TMP is a temperature monitoring probe. The current temperatures in the latest report from Republic Services, these are the highest temperatures. So we're at 163, 167, 172, and 174 respectively. Next. The triggers. The original plan, phase 1 cap of the North Quarry, enhanced gas collection and I forget the second CS I had in my head. Collection and control system. I'm really happy that both of my interns from this summer are here. Today was my first day without them, and I was lost all day. I didn't know what I was doing. The revised plan, you can just read it for yourself right there. They broke up capping the North Quarry into phases. So phase 1A next, and 1B. We've got some maps to show you what's going on. So this is the map. This is the original plan right here. This line right here, the dotted line, that's where the original first part of the capping was going to take place. One of the big problems that we had in the original plan, this black line that goes beyond my fingertip right there, that's where Republic had trigger line 3. That's if the smoldering event was shown to have gone that far into the North Quarry, then Republic Services would dig a ditch to try and prevent the fire. The thing that really frustrates me about the latest submission is that at some points Republic Services will say, like it did to the DNR, this isn't in the agreed order, and they wrap themselves around the agreed order and say we can't do that because it does not specifically say in the agreed order that you have the right to tell us to cap the North Quarry. The problem I have with that is that it's not in the agreed order to dig a ditch in the radioactive part of the landfill, because the state of Missouri has no jurisdiction over the radioactive part of the landfill. That's the Environmental Protection Agency. So I take it with a grain of salt anytime they complain that if it's not in the agreed order they can't do it, because they wrote plans outside of the agreed order themselves. So you can't have it both ways. Next, we'll do each of these maps individually. Again, here's the old line for the first part of the capping, the old trigger line. Next. Here's the new trigger line for the isolation break. It moved about 150 feet to the south, which Todd Ballhammer and the DNR's fire experts are basically saying you should not allow the fire to get into the North Quarry to begin with, period, because that poses a significant threat and another long-term problem that this community will have to face because landfill fires can burn for years. So we don't want 2 quarries on fire, because then we don't know how long they'll be burning or smoldering. And then the second part of that is that the northern quarry has older wastes in it, and Todd Ballhammer in his recent memo to DNR said that there's no documentation that he's found that shows what's actually in the North Quarry, so you don't know how a smoldering event will actually react, because you have a bunch of unknown material in the North Quarry. It's older, they filled that one up first, and and then they started filling up the south quarry, which is where the landfill fire smoldering. Again, here, this red line right here that cuts up like that, that's the part of the operable Unit 1, Area 1, where the radioactive wastes were dumped. This black line right here is inside of that. The Environmental Protection Agency, the DNR, and the Department of Health and Senior Services just wrote a comment letter to Republic Services about this proposal. And again, that was something that we were significantly concerned about and commented on in our letter. Over here is an approximation, this red blob you see right here. This is an approximation of where the radioactive wastes are in the in operable Unit 1, Area 1. I'm just going to call it Area 1 from now on. So this is where they think it is. They don't actually know. It says estimated extent of radiologically impacted material provided by EMSI. EMSI is the contractor that did all the studies for Republic Services and the other potentially responsible parties for operable Unit 1, which includes another area in this landfill that has much more radioactive wastes. So the Department of Energy is a PRP, a potentially responsible party, and so is General Atomics. Their subsidiary is Powder Corporation. General Atomics makes drones. And our federal government has a lot of contracts with General Atomics, just so you know. Next. This is, where were we at? Republic, oh yeah, so right here, Republic Services talked about doing some cooling in the latest contingency plan they submitted to Republic Services. In the latest filing, the company said that it will submit plans for this proposal in the future. I don't know exactly when that's going to be. We'll work on figuring that out for the next meeting. All of this is on the DNR website, so you can go and find it. And I would really encourage you to read DNR's independent landfill fire experts' take on what's going on with Republic Services, because it's really night and day between the two. Next. Triggering, I meant to put tripping trigger to, not triggering trigger to. Anyways. Okay, so original plan. Complete phase 2, Cat North Quarry, enhance the gas collection and control system, completed in 6 months. The revised plan, if reading is south of the trigger line 2 that we looked at, the complete phase 1A and 1B, that would be putting a cap on the entire quarry, North Quarry. And if it moves north of the trigger line 2, then they'll dig that ditch in Area 1 where the radioactive wastes are. Next. So this is a revised plan. Unfortunately, this is happening. So trigger line 3 is actually right here. These graphs are parallel to one another. So this is where Republic Services had proposed digging that trench, the ditch, whatever you want to call it, in Area 1. They moved it back to right here. Next. But basically, yeah, go back one more actually, push up. DNR's landfill fire experts believe that where Republic Services has their trigger line for the ditch should be like over here. All right, next. This is an up-close part of operable Unit 1, Area 1. It's not that we don't necessarily agree with Republic Services that it's a better idea to dig here. It's just how they handle themselves when disagreeing with the DNR about certain things, saying it's not in the agreed order, as I said earlier, and then you go and do something that's not in the agreed order. So this is where they want to dig the ditch in OU1, Area 1. And remember that big red blob that we looked at earlier? This is a side view of where they think that line is. So they think that the radioactive material goes this far and stops, and they want to dig their ditch here.
The rainwater.
So in our comment letter, which is on our website, moenviron.org, you can read our concern about that. We said You're going to need to do a lot of testing along the proposed line. You need to make sure that it's not radiologically impacted material. If it is, then you have to send it to the designated places that were enumerated in the EPA feasibility and supplemental feasibility study. Basically, Idaho and Utah are places that accept low-level ionizing radiation wastes. And if they're contaminated, we don't want this problem going to some other landfill. We want it to go into a sanctioned place for radioactive wastes. Next. All right. This is the map again, which means I think that my time here is done. And I believe if you go to the next one, we'll have Dawn come up. Oh, no, I'm not done, sorry. These are gas extraction wells. So this is what helps maintain the methane in the landfill and tries to make sure that there's not going to be landfill fire. So this is the North Quarry, up there where it says February 2013. That's the month that this document was produced. And it's also where it says February 2013 is the same area where the radioactive wastes are located. So what the purple means good. You want to see all purple in the North Quarry. That means that the gas extraction wells are reading temperatures below 130 degrees, which means that that's roughly, you know, when you have a bunch of decomposing stuff that heats up, if you have compost pile in your backyard, you go and turn it over every now and again, and in the winter you see the steam. So there's a couple of blue dots right here, which means the temperatures are between 131 and 151. Causes a little room for concern. Next. So this is the southern quarry. It's a little more colorful. That's where the landfill fire is. Next. Oh, and then in May, we actually had one gas extraction well heat up pretty close to the area where the radioactive wastes were dumped. And then a couple more in this area, which is a little bit larger of an area, started heating up as well in May 2013. Next. This is May 2013 on the south side. Next. This is June 2013. So we've got this guy right here. 155 to 171. The highest temperature I actually read was 155 degrees in June. This is the most recent gas extraction well temperature data that I have been able to find. And it's, again, surrounded by those blue ones that we saw on the last slide. And then that one up there by the radioactive wastes is still blue. Next. Again, this is the South Quarry, where the landfill fire is happening. Next. So, what can go wrong? Some of you have seen this before. Rio, right over there, and Emma both contributed to this. So I would actually just give them a little quick round of applause because they were helping put all this stuff together for you guys. So there was the tornado that came through on May 31st. This was the flood of 93. We've got a really big graphic rolled up here. I forgot to bring tape that shows the difference between the 91, what the rivers looked like in 91 in St. Louis and what the rivers looked like in 93, thanks to NASA. Here's another tornado. I think that was 2011. These are epicenters of earthquakes in the St. Louis area. New Madrid Fault's down here, but the epicenters all around St. Louis. Here's just a map of where the radioactive areas are located at the landfill. There's a little flame down here for the fire. Next. So the reason that I want to talk about what could go wrong, you're going to have to pull this up so people can see what's on the bottom because this one's important. This is Republic Services quarterly financial statements that they filed with the Security and Exchange Commission. And this was from April 24th. Yeah, there you go, perfect. So this is from April 24th, and this is Bridgeton Landfill. During 2012, we encountered environmental issues at our closed Bridgeton Landfill. The landfill's fire, as we're being told, actually started in 2010. As of March 31, 2012, the remediation liability for this site is $59 million. We believe the remaining reasonably possible range of loss for remediation costs is between $45 million and $235 million. So that was April. and they just filed a new report with the Security and Exchange Commission in July on the 25th. So if we go to the next one, you'll see that the numbers jumped up quite significantly to the point where their low range is 112 million for the remaining remedial efforts at the landfill, and their high range is $392 million. And to this point, they have spent $143.4 million. So this is one of those things where I get to the point where, do I take the word of MDNR's independent landfill fire expert, who's counting on his paycheck to make sure that he does his job right, along with his credibility, so he'll be hired in other places? Or the company that is telling its shareholders that it could lose almost $400 million over the remaining remediation of the Bridgeton Landfill? And it's my understanding, and my reading of this doesn't incorporate any of the financial cost of the remedial work for the radioactive wastes. So I just wanted, these are real numbers, and this is something that's important, and you guys should know about it. And now I believe I'm done. Next. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm sorry, I like you guys all the time. Again, these are some of the recommendations from Todd Thalhammer and Dr. Stark from MDNR, their independent fire contractors. This was on the first contingency plan that the Public Services filed. Essentially, community impacts must be accounted for in the contingency plan. The subsurface event should be isolated and contained in the neck portion of the Bridgeton landfill. I left a few of these out because they're not necessarily relevant right now. Again, you can find all this online. The gas intercept wells are experimental, and additional safeguards should be in place to ensure the subsurface event remains in the southern quarry. And then there's some more information down here at the bottom about why he thinks that the trigger values set by our public services in the first contingency plan don't remotely resemble any of the technical literature that's out there on landfill fires. Next. Now I'm finished. Thank you.
Here today that went to the fire board that went and recognized them and delivered goodies and stuff? A lot of people here. I gotta tell you, and I know they're getting some kickback from it, but they really stuck their neck out for this community. The Landfill Fire Department did, specifically Matt Levanchi, and I know that other members of the board are on board. Personally, they want this radioactive waste removed, and I feel bad for him. In talking with the fire people, he said it's kind of like winning the lottery twice. Not only do you have a landfill fire, but you have it next to nuclear weapons waste. And I don't think we'll ever see like a letter from them that says they want it out. But I know that just having them on board, just having them, sorry, I'm getting emotional again. Just having them say that they're going to be there for us, that's a lot better than any of these other agencies have done. It really is. It means something. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to talk about too real quick, and I know for some of you that was really technical what Ed explained. He worked all day on that, and he's got other environmental issues that the Missouri Coalition for the Environment does. If you notice that picture where that dot started to heat up, can you get that up there again, Rio? The one where the dot in the North Quarry. Do you see that? We almost won the lottery 3 times. That is a fire. That is a subsurface smoldering event, a fire that started but didn't sustain, went down. That's scary. Look how close. Up north by where the June is, the June 2013, that's where your radioactive waste sits. If that fire would have kept going, there wouldn't have been anything they could have done to stop it. Look how close that is. Look how close. That's well within the impacted area. That's a problem. That's a huge problem. And, you know, I know that you guys get bored sometimes talking about this contingency plan, but it's important to understand that as of right now, as of this moment, there is not an agreed upon plan. There's nothing in place. So tomorrow morning, if that fire hops those wells, which the fire experts who are working for the DNR believe that these wells will not hold back this fire. They believe that eventually it will push against it. And that is why the DNR and the fire experts are fighting so hard to get a plan in place, just, you know, for when it does eventually happen. We have got to stay on top of these agencies. You know, I speak with the DNR maybe 2-3 times a week. Emma and I joke, Wednesday is call Chris Noggle from the DNR day. I mean, seriously, a lot of people do not understand, and a lot of the elected officials I know, like Bill, did you have any idea how serious it was before you met with Army?
Absolutely no idea.
They didn't know. They don't know. It's complicated to read. What Ed did up here in this presentation took hours. These things are, what, is this 600 pages probably?
Yeah, it's thick.
It is. It's really thick. It's hard to read this stuff. It is, and you know, a big thank you to the Missouri Coalition for the Environment, because do you see DNR represented today? Do you see the EPA up here? Who, you know, nobody else from those agencies has taken it upon themselves to come out and educate this community. And that is one of the things that the coalition does, and that's why we rely on them so heavily, because, you know, I spend hours going over these plans too, and frankly, it's absolutely frightening. So yeah, if you leave this meeting with nothing, I want you to look up here and I want you to see that purple dot and know that that's a real possibility, and it happened twice. Twice it went up and it went down because it didn't sustain. And then a couple months later it came back up and then it went back down. That is why we have to fight so hard to make sure that there's something in place for if this fire moves or if another one starts.
Dawn, is there any more wells that are closer?
No, and that's a very good question. I know it's hard because it's landfills, and who wants to know about a landfill, but you know, there are methane extraction wells, gas extraction wells, and they have temperature readings on them. So all throughout the North Quarry, these are these readings. But here's the problem, okay? There are also temperature monitoring probes that are specifically designed to measure temperatures inside of the landfill. Those go deep into the ground, so those get the actual temperature. Now, your gas extraction wells, they measure the temperature once it's up, but it has to rise. And when it does that, there's some cooling that takes place. So the problem is that the temperatures, even on here, the temperatures you're seeing, they could be a lot cooler than what they actually are. So that is why the DNR is fighting to get new temperature monitoring probes, because they want to be able to see any given day exactly where this fire is. And you know, I've been really careful not to poke Republic in the eye too much, but I'll tell you what, to me it makes no sense whatsoever why they wouldn't want to know where their own fire is in their landfill. I would think that that would be a priority of theirs too, to know. So, is there any other questions?
Have they got like a siren or something to let us know if we get out of that problem that's really going to happen?
No, and she asked if there was a siren in place. No. The good news, and I will say this, you know, we talk about the scary word, the dirty bomb word, and that scares people. This is not something that will happen overnight, okay? When that fire advances, they will have warning. Now, how much warning? Be it a couple of months, 6 months, they don't really know, because like Ed said, what's in the North Quarry, although it's the same material, is older and it will burn differently. So, and that's one of the questions that I asked the DNR. I said, you know, people are afraid, and he said, you know, they're afraid to use the dirty bomb word because that's an ugly word, but let's just say that, yeah, anytime you have fire and smoke and it hits radioactive material, you do have particles that go in the smoke. You would have alpha and beta emitters. So if you don't want to use the word dirty bomb, that's fine, but what, dispersion via smoke? I mean, they need to come up with one, and I know that they're working really hard on trying to come up with an actual what happens when this fire hits the waste. The problem is that it depends on where the fire hits and in what areas. Some areas are more condensed than others in that nuclear, where the actual radiation sits, so that's a problem too. So I don't know that we will ever get an answer to that, is what I'm telling you. I don't know that, I think that these are probably as good as we're gonna get.
Wouldn't they schedule to do some soil boring samples to see what's actually down in that hard quarry? I mean, what if this nuclear waste is closer than there?
Jay Black, and myself and Harvey, we met at Harvey's house. We came up with a list of questions, and that was one of them, for soil boring samples, and then Representative Bill Otto sent them on his letterhead to the DNR, because what we said was, okay, well, can you figure out what's in the North Quarry? Can you just do soil testing? I can say on the report that came out today, and I don't know, Ed, you didn't have a chance to look at it, I looked it over, that is one of the things that they talk about in the report. So they did listen to us. They did ask, now what has to happen, and this frustrates me to no end, is now from today, Republic has 20 days to comment. So they're going back and forth. And so my question to the Attorney General was, okay, how long does the back and forward go? And they said, well, this is a negotiation period. So I'm like, okay, so do you know when you will have a working contingency plan? Because the thing is, they have all these trenches and stuff, they have these ideas, but without having a court-approved plan, I mean, you know, the DNR would have to take it and go in front of a judge and take it away from Republic to implement a plan, is pretty much what would happen. So.
So who has that power now? To take it away from Republic?
The governor. That's why we want to rent the bus and knock on his door.
Do you know how close that fire is getting now to the...
The fire is being held back. Here's the thing. Do you have a picture of the gas interceptor wells? It's probably on your first one, right? The neck area?
Well, I don't have an actual, oh yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Go back to that. There you go. The blue.
Okay. So there are two, you guys still hear me? No? Sorry. With me, it's like walking your dog. There is a line here and a line there. Do you see the two lines? One that goes up and it kind of zigzags. The fire made it past the first interceptor wells. It made it past the first line and it's pushing up against the second. So that is something else that you need to know too, is that these were not designed for, the second interceptor wells where the fire is sitting, that was the backup plan. That was their backup plan. And it hit that, it got past the first, now it's pushing up against the second. The temperatures are rising, and I'm not joking when I say I call him 3 times a week and say, where's my temperature, where's my CO data, are you gonna release it or do I have to sunshine it? They want it to heat up to a certain extent because they want to know where the fire, it helps them to see where the fire is. The problem with this landfill fire is that because of the groundwater, there's steam. It's called a steam front, kind of like a cold front when it comes through. So the heat is actually out all in front of this fire. So it's like a fireplace. There's the fire and then you're standing next to it and you can feel the heat. Does that make sense?
So temperature monitoring probes like 1 through 4, they've consistently been in the range of like 120 to 160 degrees, 165 degrees. But yeah, so far the story is that the landfill fire is being suppressed by the gas interceptor wells. And how long those gas interceptor wells work, Top Alhammer said that they're really never been used before, and landfill fires can burn for several years. And so there's a long-term issue here with what to do in the neck.
And the thing that's really frustrating, and one of the other purposes of this community group is, it's not just to come and educate people, because you guys need to know what's going on, but it's also to put pressure on these people. One of the things that I would like to see, and I don't know about you, I would like to see somebody out here either talking to us or us, we should have a say on part of this contingency plan. We should at least know what's being talked about behind closed doors. You know, when Chris Koster ran for Attorney General, he said, I want to be the people's lawyer. You know, I don't like my lawyer in a room making decisions without talking to me. You know, and it's not that I'm an expert or anybody's an expert, but it would be nice to know, you know, for instance, the ditch in the radioactive area. If you're going to dig a ditch, then get it out. You know, I mean, dig your ditch, and then just keep moving north. Just keep going while you're at it. I mean, that's because that stuff has to go somewhere. I mean, and it's going to be impacted material to some extent. So they're going to have to dispose of that properly. So why not? They're going to have to hire people to do that. So, sorry, Keith.
Do you know what the EPA's position is on this conversation about the heat up and potentially moving into the next these two quarries? Have they said anything? I'm very intrigued by the radio interview that you talked about, where clearing council says that the community and EPA are on opposite sides of the question. What question precisely? I was able to hear that. Was she referring to this one or the question of removal?
She is, the EPA stance is basically nothing is being impacted right now. And so right now, they do not feel that the community is at risk from the radioactive material. That's basically their stance. So that,
Yeah, I was listening to that the other day, I was also listening to it. Claire stated that she felt that the tests that the agencies were doing were appropriate and indicated that everything was safe, and we had no reason to worry. However, the community was thinking and doing the opposite of that. In other words, we didn't believe the tests,
right.
and we should trust the tests. The tests were all okay, and everything was safe.
The tests are not all okay.
Yeah.
The test, and let me tell you, this is the last point of the evening, and I promise you guys can go home, but this is a biggie. We have a water problem up on this landfill, a big one. And I'm gonna try and keep the chemistry low, I'm gonna use fruit juice, okay? We have apples and oranges and grapes sitting up in Westlake Landfill. In the north area, it's gonna go from
This is the EPA's response to radium in the groundwater.
Okay, can you guys read that? Because I can't read it from here. Okay, so basically you have, like I said, apples, oranges, and grapes sitting up in the radiological area. So when you test in the water, you're going to find apple juice, grape juice, and orange juice. They're testing now, and they have been for some time, and they're finding pineapple juice. Where's the pineapple? That's what that means chemistry-wise. It's all fruit juice. It's all radioactive. They're finding radioactivity, but let me see, the isotopic abundances of radium in the landfill waste do not appear to match those of radium found in the groundwater samples. Both RA-226 and RA-228 are found in the groundwater samples, while the OU1 soil samples, that's your Area 1, contain primarily radon-226 with little to no radon-228. Radon-228, this is the one that they're finding, and they don't know where it's from. That's a problem. That's a big, big problem. And that is one of the things that the EPA is focusing on right now. To answer your other question, they don't feel like we're at risk right now because they feel like the fire is not up against the waste. But now we have a separate water issue. We really did win the lottery 4 times, people. We really did. We've got issue upon issue upon issue upon issue. So we're waiting on, I don't know what we're waiting on. Nobody can get an answer from the EPA as to what this means. They saw it, back in the fall, right? Ed 2, in the fall water report, it was there. They've had time to study it. They're just not really talking to us about it. They just keep saying, we don't know where it's coming from, we're looking into it, so.
To answer your question also, if Harvey would actually, we use Harvey because we talked to Bill, and Bill stated he didn't know what was going on until he sat down with Harvey. If Claire actually sat down with Harvey, she would not make that statement.
Right, and that's really important. I think Bill can talk about that too. This is complicated. Like he said, was that 3-hour meeting?
Yeah, about 2.5 hours, and we actually probably didn't get through all of the material that we had, to be
I mean, this is complicated stuff, and it really needs to be explained, because your legislators can't just get up and say, okay, this is what, I mean, they need to wrap their heads around it too. So like I said, the technical committee, we're trying to get a group together that can actually sit down. We really need to just get a room like this, and get these officials in the room and go over Harvey's material. I mean, that would probably be... Well, yeah, I mean, they would. But you know, if they did, then they'd understand that another fire tried to start. I mean, these are all things, you guys are more educated than they are right now, and that's scary. So.
Don, I want to bypass it. I'm going to direct it to Doug, and probably a little more on that. Whether it's this meeting or the CAG meeting, if we have a CAG meeting and Pat will just charge us a little bit for this, the EPA has to send a representative here. That way we can get some questions, at least in front of them. When are we going to do that?
We're going to do it very soon. Actually, I've been trying to talk with, and let's discuss this openly real quick here. I've been placing calls and emails to our representative with the Environmental Protection Agency that handles our CAG. They have to, by law, respond to me. She's been busy, hasn't gotten around to it for a few weeks now. So if you have any free time, feel free to send Region 7 an email and ask them why they haven't responded to their CAG. We are in the process of trying to get a technical assistance grant and set up a regular routine for public meetings and having the EPA present. The EPA has to be present, has to respond to questions at a CAG meeting. And we don't even actually have to pay. They're required by law to show up to any meeting that would pay something to, but they'll show up without that. Mostly because they'll show up to make sure that we're not doing anything dangerous, like giving answers to questions.
Well, actually, I've got a couple comments. I've heard everybody talking about carbon gas smoke. I talked to her personally on the phone. She said this ain't her problem. This ain't her jurisdiction.
She said it.
I told her, come on down here to the landfill and drink some of the water, just like I did in one of our other meetings, in our first one. Oh, well, I can't be bothered because of St. Louis. I've got a golf game to go to. Well, guess what? Come play golf right here at the landfill.
And
see what happens to your golf ball.
I know that her aide, Joe Middleton, she couldn't be here tonight, so we are sending her minutes. But I know I spoke with Joe this afternoon, and then Ed, we had a group that went together and met with her, kind of like what happened at Charlie Dooley's office with Harvey. That's what we need to set up with Claire McCaskill's office. You know, I'm all for thinking the worst at times, but when it comes to elected officials and stuff, you guys have gotten some of those form letters, come on, right? I mean, they really are not on top of this, and that's a form letter. It's sad that we have to do somebody's job in the community, has to educate these people, but at the same time, I think, like, again, I keep using you, I'm so sorry, Bill, but I mean, it's worth it when you really find out. You kind of leave, you know, your eyes are opened, and it becomes a big deal, and then you understand why all of this meet the way we do, and we're so worried about it, so.
Well, another fun part is when we take a shower, we don't understand. We're getting burnt by the water, and it ain't from the hot water.
Have you called DNR?
We call everybody.
We call all of them.
We called everybody under the sun. I even took a soil sample and a water sample at Channel 5. I'm still waiting to hear back.
You might be able to sunshine that. You should be able to make a formal complaint with the Department of Natural Resources on their website. You know, we do have representatives in the room that you can talk to after this, and I would ask if one of them, on behalf of you guys, would maybe consider doing that, so. Yeah, sorry.
I wish Mary Nichols hadn't left, because she used to be on the state council in Maryland Heights.
Yeah.
I live in the Brookside Edition, off of where Parkwood and Mountain Road come together.
Yeah, I know this.
So there's a couple of concerns that I have there. Number one, you wonder why Maryland Heights doesn't have anything to do with this. My opinion only is we've got 2 quarries in Maryland Heights, and Fred Weber swings a lot of weight. And they're just downstream from what you're talking about. They have another one up there where Dorset Road makes a V, goes right there to Lindbergh. I'm sure that there's some, it's a dump, but there's another Allied waste dump, which I think is a part of Republic. And it's like, I can't remember exactly what the name of the streets are, but it runs right and takes a cutoff into Lindbergh. So if you want to be extreme about this a little bit, they grant the Brookview Nursing Home, and I mentioned it when I was over a few minutes ago, sits on an underground lake. Now, this would have to be re-verified. But back in the 60s, when William H. and Nelson Cutler Company built that, I was one of the electricians working out there. And I overheard some of the county officials, after they did their test borings, declare that the old building sits on an underground lake. Now, I know most of the water in this area runs towards the river, but I also know that you have a lot of limestone, and I've had situations before where you change the force on certain streams, like a spring, it comes up and bubbles in another spot. So it's not to say that you might not have, in the future, if you don't already, radioactive water flowing back into Merrill Heights, Brookside, and a big part of Maryland Heights.
Well,
And especially with the flood that you talked about in 93.
Because it pushes the water up from
Pushes backwards.
underground.
It can't go where it's going, it has to go someplace. That's another concern of mine with metropolitan sewer now, because in that same area, they're putting in small pipes where that water used to back up in those creeks right there. And when those pipes get full, where's it gonna go? In people's basements. Now, that's a new estimate. But the point is, if it's radioactive, who knows what's gonna happen from there on. So what I suggested to the fellow in the blue shirt a few minutes ago was maybe you need to have some geologists look into this, do some more test borings. And the last time when they wanted to do the addition on Brookview, I brought that up to the younger owner over about that sitting on that underground lake. And he just laughed at me and he says, the county doesn't have those kind of records going back to the 60s on test borings.
I bet they.
Now, I have no proof about the John Webb, about the Fred Weber quarry, but there's a person that lives there, and knowing what happens in politics, I would say that there's some push right there not to get involved in this because of that.
You know, and there very well may be, this community's just getting hammered between, and we've got the superintendent here, so I can say it, between what's happening to the school district right now and what's happening to our community. We gotta fix our community, people. We gotta fix it, because one thing about the waste that's sitting there, it's from the Manhattan Project. You have the oldest radioactive waste in the world sitting up here. I mean, you really do. We have a tendency in St. Louis to dump this stuff, and then we clean it up, but we move away from it. We just keep moving out and letting these neighborhoods fall apart. I don't want to see that happen in Bridgeton and Maryland Heights. I really want this to get fixed and for this to be a safe area again. How many of you were affected by the tornado? A tornado, not the tornado. We get enough of them. There's no worse feeling in the world than wondering if your house is safe and feeling like you can't go back in your home. I'm sure plenty of you guys experienced that. It's no different living next to this, and I'm glad that we had DePaul here to talk about stress. You want to talk about stress? It's like watching a tornado in slow motion, isn't it, up here in this landfill? Like, it really is. Can you really say a year from now what this community is going to look like? And that, if nothing else prompts the removal of the radioactive waste, and I know I keep going, we have a landfill fire, and it cannot be controlled. And let's get that straight. I challenge you to Google it tonight, landfill fires. They are not controlled. They are dealt with. They are, that you can put caps on them and try and keep the odors down, but as far as actually extinguishing them, we have a problem. What they're doing up in the landfill right now, when Ed said they're using experimental technology to control this fire, he's absolutely right. And this comes directly from the DNR's mouth. I actually had this conversation while I was in the hospital with him on Monday. I said, it's got to make you nervous, Chris, that you're inventing ways right now. You're doing a science experiment. This is all a hypothesis. And he said, that's why we have the two best landfill experts in the world. And I said, really, why aren't you using the best two landfill experts in the world? Why aren't you taking their advice? Why isn't the Attorney General? Why are we going back and forth with this contingency plan?
While the fire.
Yeah, while the fire is just there, so. Does anybody else have any questions?
One more point that you might be interested in knowing. I'm going to be 72 years old. When I was a kid, my mother worked at the old Curtis Wright plant and made warplanes for World War II. Back before it was McDonald. And then McDonald Douglas and now it's Fuller. The real waste was originally, I think the road's called Cypress Road, that runs into Lindbergh. It was originally out there. She pointed out to me the mounds of earth years ago when I was a kid. She says, that's all radioactive. If ever you're working out there or in the future, you don't want to be around over in that area. And then, the last time we heard, back in 73, they moved it from that location to where it's at right now.
I'm not surprised. It's like a nuclear hot potato. It really is. It just
I don't know how safe that area is anymore. part of Hazelwood, I think, now, if I'm not mistaken. There was a Kroger plant back in close to there.
Coldwater Creek.
Yeah, it's getting cleaned up.
Yeah, they're cleaning it. It's getting cleaned up. It falls under a different program that the U.S. Army Corps of
They
Engineers.
found radioactive, I mean, you never can
They
throw it all, you know, you would think there would still maybe be some of it.
Well, some of it got excavated and taken to Westlake.
Well, and that's the scary stuff. They're still remediating that site. It's almost done. He's talking about the site. There were mountains of this stuff, and it ended up here at Westlake, okay? So the ground that it was sitting on, because imagine what was in those mountains. The ground that they were sitting on, was so radioactive, it was dug out 15 feet in some areas. So that tells you how bad the stuff that we got up here in Westlake is. So, and they're still cleaning up the site just because it sat there. So, is there anything else?
You operating engineers must be taller than the rest of us. I'm Kathleen Logan Smith. I'm with the Missouri Coalition for the Environment, and I know it's a school night, and so we're going to try to get folks out of here. I wanted to ask a couple of questions real quick. How many people are here because you have property in the area? How many people are here because you've been living with this odor that we get to smell on the way in tonight? The one that they stopped in June. Remember that odor that you could smell tonight in August? That smell. How many people are here for your kids? How many people are here for someone else's kids? Ionizing radiation is dangerous. It is very, very dangerous, and it hurts kids, tomorrow's kids, and their kids, and their kids, which is why it needs to get taken to a safer place. And that's really the bottom line. And I understand, and thank you all for your patience, because there is a lot of data, and we do read the data. We do go through the data because it's important to understand where the fire is, where it's moving, and how these contaminants can spread, and how we can stop them. And it's going to take a long time. This is not a sprint, this is a marathon. And you may have to pass the baton to the next person to keep it going. But we need all of you to do everything that you can. And everybody can do something. If only to pray. And you can join the Franciscan Sisters Wednesday morning at 10 on the north side of the site to pray. And you can make a phone call. Everyone can make a phone call. You can send an email. And you can make noise about this issue. And you can ask questions and insist that your elected officials at all levels care. Because, and the people that you buy services from, and the doctors at the hospital, and the pharmacists at the hospital, and all of us have to work together because we are all in this together. Every single person here, from Governor Nixon all the way down, we are in this together, and we have to move together. And so, even if your neighbor may not be aware of this issue right now, or may not be that interested in it right now, they're in it with us. So take action and do what you can. Do what you can, where you are, with what you have, to help us stop this. We need to stop the fire, and we need to get the radioactive waste out. And we need to do it safely so that we're the last generation that has this headache. We still have petitions circulating. If you have them and haven't turned them in, you can turn them in. If you need them, you can get them on the website. And we also are going to do some more flyering. We'll get the next meeting scheduled, and we'll get some more flyers out. We're going to head to, we're looking forward to Food Truck Night at Creve Coeur Lake. Has anybody been out there for Food Truck Night? I hear the parking's nuts, is that true?
Parking is insane.
Okay, parking is insane, but if we park somewhere and bike in with flyers and then bring your money, because you don't even have to pack a picnic, because the food trucks will be there, right? So if you want to join us, that's next week too, Wednesday the 28th. So if you want to help flyer and spread the word to other folks in the community who have investments here, and they've invested their families, and they've invested in property, and they want to protect it, help us spread the word. And I think that's all we have to say tonight. Does anybody have any last question? All right. Gail?
When's the next CAG meeting?
When's the next CAG meeting,
Maybe we can
Doug?
set the date for it.
It's not
I'll
set.
put it on Facebook, and we'll also be doing mailings this time most likely, because EPA is going to start funding some stuff.
Okay, how many people not on Facebook? Because those people do exist, and I'm going to respect that, okay? Because I think if we assume everybody's on Facebook all the time, we're going to lose some folks. So if you're not on Facebook, make sure that Doug has your address, and you'll get something in the mail, okay? And the Postal Service, I assume, comes to your house, so that'll be good. And if there's more information you want from any of us, and you want to talk to us afterwards, that's fine, too. Ed, is there anything else you have before we go? What? No, he's not, he's walking in.
If anybody, there's 2 letters, we talked about the letter, people walked in, there's one to Governor Nixon, and then there's one that's gonna go to our 4 federally elected officials. If you didn't sign those, please do. We're requesting that our federally electeds and Governor Nixon formally go on the record about what they would like to see done in this landfill, whether they want to see the radioactive waste stay there, come out and say that. If they want to see it gone, say that too. Just give us some indication of how you, the elected officials, feel what should be happening in this landfill, instead of leaving the people who elected them, or didn't elect them, either way there are elected officials, hanging in with it.
Okay, so make sure you sign the letters to the governor and our elected officials over there, because they do pay attention to those letters. They've really made an impression on the elected officials, because if we have 80 people sign a letter, that's just not what normally comes across their desk. So it would be great if we could get everybody's signature. And also over here in this box are the stress packets. I know this is stressful for people who who have investments here and who are dealing with sick family members and are dealing with their own illnesses, and there is help, and there are people who can be with you, and all of us, of course, are with you too. But if you want to grab one of those and find out what services might be available, do that on the way out too, because we have to take care of each other, which is part of the reason we're here. So thank you everyone for coming out, and keep in touch.